How AI is changing the shape of product teams. I recently ran a project for a fast-growing UK finance company called Lovey. They're on track to become a full bank, and the CEO, Jack, had a brief that was equal parts terrifying and exciting. I want the best app in the finance space, Revolut, but better. The team I inherited was set up the way every product team I've ever worked with has been set up. Product manager, UX designer, UI designer, UX researcher, front-end engineer, back-end engineer. Each person in their lane, passing work over the wall to the next person and wondering why the thing that came back didn't look anything like they'd imagined. I asked Jack if he'd ever heard of skunkworks. The idea comes from a US military approach where you get a bunch of smart people in the room together, give them a goal, cut down bureaucracy, and everyone picks up whatever needs doing to get it done. We took that philosophy and built what we called the Lovey App Squad. The designers were booking calls with payment providers, I was doing go-to-market planning, engineers were digging into banking license regulations. Nobody was waiting for a ticket. Everyone was just helping each other get to the point where we had something people would actually want to use, pay for, and that had commercial legs. We went from idea to commercially ready app in a few months. It was some of the best work I'd been involved in. There was one developer in another team who didn't love it though. They preferred the old way. Give me a ticket, I'll do the work, job done. They didn't stick around long after that project, and I think about them a lot these days, because the shift they resisted is about to happen to everyone, whether they're ready for it or not. The shape of teams until now. Big tech had a lot of spare cash in the 2010s. The playbook was wonderfully capitalist, and a simple capture the market, kill the competition, then figure out how to make money later. Everyone was making the world a better place, and there was plenty of budget to hire specialists for every conceivable role. Building digital products is still genuinely complicated, regardless of what the general public with a Claude Pro account say. It requires constant back and forth, shared understanding of the domain, technical skills overlapping, and good judgment about what to build next. But the way most companies solved that complexity was to add more people, not to help existing people work differently. You ended up with siloed teams who didn't really talk to each other. I spent a solid chunk of my career devising ways to improve humans just talking to other humans, which is a bit depressing to have to admit. When I went through the hiring process at a big FANG company, the balance of generalist to specialist was something they clearly thought about. They rarely wanted someone who just coded. They wanted people who could understand the commercial picture, communicate ideas effectively, and grasp user needs, but who also had a deep skill in their particular area. Amazon's "it's always day one" ethos captured something very important about this. The best companies knew that curiosity and breadth mattered alongside depth. Before there was all this money sloshing around, this whole space was dominated by enthusiasts. People who wanted to build something cool and just find out how to do it. I like to think of myself as one of those people. I started my career as a guitar and violin repairer and only fell into software engineering because the website I built for my lutherie business started attracting client work. Nobody handed me a job spec that said engineer or product owner. I just kept building things that I found fascinating. What's shifting now? Money is still flowing into tech, but there's a ceiling on how long that can last. When the next financial squeeze inevitably arrives, teams will have to be lean and actually profitable to justify their existence. That process has already started. Companies are hiring more generalists, people who can leverage AI tools to do the work that used to require 2 or 3 specialists. Nobody is being fully replaced overnight, but teams are getting smaller and the expectations for what each person contributes are getting broader. This is where AI changes the equation. Not by replacing engineers, but by compressing the time it takes to go from idea to working software. When the implementation part of the job gets faster, the thinking part becomes more valuable. The questions you ask before you start building, the judgment you apply about what's worth building at all, and the ability to spot when you're solving a problem nobody actually has. And those things become the differentiator. Where this is headed. My best guess, based on where I've seen human judgment create the most value, is that teams are going to be small and fast. Engineering, design, and product are going to overlap more than they ever have before. The boundaries between those disciplines were always a bit artificial anyway. They existed partly because the work was really complex genuinely, and partly because organizations love org charts with clean boxes. and as teams get smaller, those boxes blur. The enthusiasts are going to win in this world. People who focus purely on craft and ignore the commercial reality will be at risk, regardless of how technically excellent they are. We're heading back towards a model where solving real problems with a commercial brain matters more than being the best at one narrow thing. Whether you call yourself a product person, a designer, or a software engineer, you need to understand what the people around you are doing and why it matters. The developer who wanted to stay in their lane and just execute tickets might have a tough time ahead. It was a perfectly reasonable way to work 5 years ago. But if you're reading this, I suspect you already sense that it isn't going to be enough anymore.